You're standing on your patio, staring at that wall of wire grid panels you zip-tied together, and something about it is nagging at you. It looks so good in the video. On your patio, it just screams cheap, and you cannot figure out why. I can. I've walked past 1,000 of these screens, and I can tell you the exact 5 reasons yours reads like a dollar store instead of a $200 iron trellis. Here's the truth nobody making these videos will admit. The gap between a screen that looks expensive and one that looks like a school project comes down to 5 mistakes. And the single most important one costs about $1.25 to fix. I've been in this trade for decades. I've installed real trellises, ripped out failed ones, and quoted privacy jobs that cost folks $2,000 when a $20 version would have looked better. So, I'm not here to sell you anything. I once built one of these Dollar Tree screens for my own mother's balcony, made 3 of these 5 mistakes, and watched it fold over in the first real wind we got that spring. I learned the hard way, so you don't have to. Stick with me to the end, because number 1 is the thing that quietly makes every cheap screen look cheap, and almost nobody talks about it. Whether you're trying to hide your neighbor's junk pile for the next 10 years, or you're staging the yard to sell next season, this applies to you. Let me walk you through it, worst to first. Let's start with number 5, because it's the one that fails you when you least expect it, usually about 2 months in, right when you've stopped thinking about it. Number 5 is the connectors. The zip ties. Everybody grabs the cheapest bag of black or clear zip ties they can find, cinches those grid panels together, and calls it done. And for about 6 weeks, it looks fine. Then summer hits. Here's what nobody tells you. Those bargain bin plastic zip ties are not rated for sunlight. There's a term for it, UV degradation. And it's not marketing nonsense, it's real chemistry. Ordinary nylon zip ties left in direct sun get brittle and start snapping in as little as 1 to 3 months, depending on how brutal your summer is. I've seen a screen that took someone a whole Saturday to build come apart panel by the middle of July, and the poor guy thought he did something wrong. He didn't. He just used the wrong tie. The fix costs you almost nothing. You want UV-resistant zip ties, the ones specifically labeled for outdoor use, and they're almost always black. That carbon black in them is what blocks the sunlight from breaking down the plastic. A pack that'll do your whole screen runs about $4 to $6. Compare that to the free ones rattling around your junk drawer that'll strand you in 90 days. And here's the insider move most people miss. Don't just tie the panels at the corners, tie every intersection where the panels meet, top, middle, and bottom, so the load spreads out. A screen tied in 12 spots holds its shape. A screen tied in 4 spots sags into a diamond and looks droopy within a month. But here's the thing, even the best zip ties in the world won't save you from mistake number 4, because this one doesn't fail slowly. This one fails all at once, usually in the middle of the night, and you wake up to find your whole screen flat on the ground. Number 4 is the wind. You built a wall. A flat, solid wall. And you never once stop to think about what a wall does when the wind hits it. Let me put it plainly, a privacy screen is a sail. The whole point of it is to block sight lines, which means it blocks air too, and the second you cover it in vines or fabric or fake greenery, you've built yourself a sail that catches every gust. I watched my mother's balcony screen do a swan dive off the railing in about a 15-mile-an-hour breeze, and 15 miles an hour is nothing. That's a pleasant afternoon. Now imagine what a real 30 or 40-mile-an-hour storm gust does. Here's the part that gets expensive if you ignore it. When that screen goes over, it doesn't just embarrass you. If it's on a balcony, it can go over the rail and hurt somebody below, and now you're not talking about a ruined weekend project, you're talking about liability. On the ground, it takes your plants with it, snaps the stems you spent all season training, and you're back to zero. So here's how the pros anchor a lightweight screen, and it costs you almost nothing. If it's freestanding, you sink the base. The cheapest bulletproof method is a couple of buckets or planters filled with concrete, and you set your vertical supports right into them. A 60-pound bag of concrete mix runs about $5 to $7, and 2 of them will hold a screen through weather that would flatten your neighbor's fancy store-bought one. If you're mounting to a railing or a fence, you don't rely on the zip ties alone. You run the supports down past the mounting point and lash them at 2 heights, top and bottom, so the wind can't peel it away from the top edge. And here's the counterintuitive trick the trade knows, and the video folks don't. You want a little bit of gap in your screen. A screen that's 90% solid lets some air pass through and survives. A screen that's 100% solid is a kite. When I plant these now, I leave the greenery slightly open, and it not only survives the wind, it actually looks more natural, more like it grew there, and less like a green wall somebody bolted up overnight. So now your ties will hold and your screen will stand. Therefore, the next question becomes the one that separates a screen that looks alive from one that looks like sad plastic, and that's where number 3 comes in, and honestly, this is where I see the most money wasted. Number 3 is the plant, or more specifically, choosing a plant that either dies on you or grows so heavy it crushes the flimsy little structure you just built. Here's the mistake in 2 flavors. Flavor 1, somebody grabs a fast annual vine like Morning Glory because it's cheap and it climbs fast, and it looks incredible by August. Then the first frost hits and the whole thing turns to brown straw, and now your expensive-looking privacy screen looks like a haunted house all winter. Flavor 2 is worse. Somebody plants something aggressive and woody, and within 2 seasons that plant weighs more than the wire grid can carry, and it either bows the whole screen, or, if you planted the wrong thing, it goes after your actual fence and siding. Let me give you the number that matters here. A vine like wisteria or trumpet vine can put on 10 to 15 feet of growth in a single season and gets genuinely heavy, and university extension horticulture programs will straight up warn you that some of these climbers can damage structures and are tough to ever fully remove once established. I've torn trumpet vine off a client's porch column, and it had literally worked its way under the paint and into the wood. That's not the plant for a $2 wire panel. So what do you actually want? For a lightweight Dollar Tree screen, you want a well-behaved climber that gives you coverage without becoming a demolition crew. Something like a clematis, an annual that you actually want to replace each year like a sweet pea if you like flowers. Or for evergreen coverage in the right climate, a modest jasmine or a small leaf ivy kept in a pot so it can't run wild. The key word is contained. Planted in a large pot, not in the ground, and you control the size and you control where the roots go. A big pot runs you what, $10 to $20, and the plant itself maybe $8 to $15. You're still all in under $50 for a screen that would cost you hundreds installed. And here's the honest confession. If you don't have a green thumb, don't fight it. Use a quality artificial greenery, but, and this is critical, get the kind rated for outdoor UV exposure, because the cheap indoor stuff fades to a nasty gray-green in 1 season, and that faded fake plant is the single fastest way to make your whole setup scream fake. Real or fake, the goal is the same. Full, even coverage that reads lush from 10 feet away. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right about now. You're thinking this whole video is for people ready to drop real money and hire somebody, and you just wanted a cheap fix for a rental balcony. Stay with me, because this next part is built precisely for you, the person who wants to spend almost nothing, do it yourself in an afternoon, and either love where you live a little more or hand the keys to a buyer who falls for it. This next stretch serves both of you at the same time, and it's where the real money logic kicks in. Because here's what most folks never connect. Privacy and curb appeal are the same lever. Real estate and appraisal reports have shown for years that quality landscaping and a well-kept exterior can add somewhere in the range of 5 to 12% to a home's perceived value, and thoughtful outdoor living space, the kind that feels private and finished, is consistently one of the features buyers say they'll pay extra for. A defined, private little patio nook doesn't just make your evening glass of tea nicer, it makes a buyer stand there and imagine their life in that spot, and buyers who imagine their life in a spot pay more and haggle less. So the cheap fix that serves both of you is this. Picture yourself walking your own yard the way a stranger does, seeing that lonely screen propped against a wall while the rest of the front yard reads neglected, and feeling that little sink in your chest because you know it looks worse than you think. That exact feeling is why I put together the complete curb appeal system, an instant download you read tonight. First Look walks you through why your yard looks worse than you think, and the fix, and its hierarchy of impact, shows you how to spend every dollar in the right order, so you never waste a cent on the wrong thing. Yard Elevated hands you the ROI protocol, the upgrades that add real dollars at resale, plus a hardscape protocol for pathways and borders that anchor everything, the same way grounding your screen base does. Want proof before you trust a word of it? Tonight, sit in your chair and try Protocol 1, edit first, Add second. Just remove one cluttered, tired thing from your view and add nothing, and watch how much cleaner the whole scene reads in 5 minutes flat. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description, or the pinned comment. And this matters right now because the season you're in is the season a neglected front yard costs you the most, whether you're staying or about to sell. Instead of one big flat screen slapped against a wall, you build a defined corner, 2 panels meeting at a right angle, anchored in 2 matching pots, framing a single chair or a small bistro set. It costs the same in materials, but it reads completely differently. A flat screen reads like you're hiding something. A framed corner reads like a designed room. Same dollar amount, same afternoon of work, wildly different result whether you're staying or selling. And that principle, that placement beats materials, is exactly what number 2 is about, and it's the mistake I see even handy people make. Number 2 is height and placement, and specifically, building the screen for where you're standing instead of for what you're actually trying to block. Here's the classic blunder. Somebody wants to block the neighbor's window, or the ugly AC unit, or the parking lot behind the fence. So they build a screen at a height that looks right while they're standing on the patio building it. Then they sit down, and the whole thing is wrong. Because the sight line you care about isn't from standing, it's from sitting, and it isn't your sight line at all half the time, it's theirs looking in at you. Let me give you the field method I use, and it costs nothing. Before you build anything, you sit down exactly where you'll actually be, in the chair, at the table, wherever. Then you have somebody hold a broom or a rake up where you're thinking of putting the screen, and you look. You find the real line between your eyes and the thing you want gone. 9 times out of 10, people discover their screen needs to be either taller than they thought or, just as often, positioned closer to them rather than closer to the eyesore. A screen 5 feet from your chair blocks way more, with way less material than a screen 15 feet away pressed against the fence. That's just geometry, and it's the geometry that saves you money, because a closer screen can be smaller and still hide more. And here's the placement mistake that quietly kills the expensive look. Gaps at the bottom and gaps between panels. A screen that floats 6 inches off the ground with daylight under it looks temporary, looks cheap, looks like something you'll take down. You want it to either meet the ground, or better, sit behind a row of pots or a low planter box so the base is grounded and finished. That visual anchor at the bottom is the difference between looks installed and looks propped up. It's the same reason a good pair of curtains touches the floor. Your eye reads floating as unfinished. Do that, and now your screen stands, survives, stays green, and hides exactly what you want from exactly where you sit. You'd think that's the whole game, but it isn't, because you can do all 4 of those things perfectly, spend a whole weekend on it, and your screen will still look cheap from the curb. And the reason why is number 1, and it's the one that made me want to make this whole video, because I got it wrong for years and never understood why my cheap builds never looked expensive. Here it is. The number 1 mistake. You left the metal its original color. That's it. That shiny, silvery, galvanized wire finish, or that flat, generic black plastic coating that comes on the Dollar Tree grid panels, that finish is the single biggest tell that gives away a cheap screen from 30 feet away. Your eye doesn't even know why it's reading cheap. It just clocks that raw, shiny wire and files it under dollar store, hardware aisle, temporary. And no amount of pretty vine fixes it, because the frame peeks through everywhere, at the edges, at the top, wherever the coverage is thin. Let me tell you how I figured this out. I had 2 nearly identical little screens I'd built as samples, same panels, same plants, same everything. On a whim, before a client visit, I hit one of them with a can of flat black spray paint I had left over from a fence job. Just the frame. I didn't even do a careful job. The client walked out, looked at both, pointed at the painted one, and asked me where I bought the wrought iron trellis and how much it cost. Same panel, same $2. The only difference was a coat of matte paint, and her brain instantly upgraded it from junk to iron. Here's why it works, and this is the part the trade quietly understands and never bothers to explain to homeowners. Expensive outdoor metalwork, real wrought iron, powder-coated aluminum, the good stuff, almost always has a matte or satin dark finish. Deep black, oil-rubbed bronze, dark forest green. Cheap stuff is shiny, silvery, or that hard plastic gloss. Your eye has been trained by a lifetime of seeing this pattern. So shine reads cheap and matte reads costly, and it happens in a fraction of a second before you can even think about it. So when you take a $2 shiny grid and give it a matte dark coat, you are hijacking that exact instinct and pointing it in your favor. The paint you want is a spray paint made for metal with a built-in primer in a flat or satin finish, and matte black or oil-rubbed bronze are the two that read the most expensive. A single can runs about $1.25 to $5 depending where you buy it, and one can covers a small screen easily. That is the whole fix. That is the difference between your neighbor asking where you bought your fancy trellis and your neighbor politely saying nothing because they can tell it came from the dollar store. And there's a bonus you get for free. That paint, especially the kind with primer built in, actually protects the metal from rust and weather, so you're not just buying looks, you're buying life. The raw finish on a lot of these cheap panels starts spotting with rust within a season once the coating scratches, and once one spot of orange rust shows up, the whole thing looks abandoned. A proper coat of exterior metal paint seals that off and buys you years. So the cheapest step is also the one that makes it last longest. Looks better, lasts longer, costs $1.25. That's the one nobody tells you. Now let me connect the dots for you, because here's where I get a little heated. Why doesn't anybody mention this? Why do all those quick little build videos skip the one step that matters most? Because a screen that looks obviously cheap keeps you coming back. It keeps the churn going. The whole cheap project economy runs on you buying the panels looking like panels, you getting frustrated, and you buying more stuff to fix it. Nobody in that chain makes a dime telling you that $1.25 can of matte paint is the actual secret, because that fix ends the cycle. And the folks selling you the $200 iron trellis at the garden center, they absolutely do not want you to know that your eye can be fooled by a rattle can. Their whole margin depends on you believing the expensive look requires expensive metal. It doesn't. It requires a matte dark finish. That's the trick they've been charging you for. So let me put the whole thing back together for you. In order, worst to first. Cheap zip ties that snap in the sun, so use UV-rated black ties and tie every intersection. A flat screen that catches the wind like a sail, so anchor the base in concrete and leave a little airflow. The wrong plant that either dies to brown straw or crushes your frame, so pick a contained, well-behaved climber in a pot. Building for standing instead of sitting with gaps at the bottom, so check your real sightline from your chair and ground the base. And the big one, leaving that shiny cheap finish alone when a single matte dark coat turns $2 wire into what everyone reads as wrought iron. Do all 5, and here's what you've actually done. You've built something that cost you under $50, stands up to weather, stays looking good for years, hides exactly what you wanted gone, and reads to every single person who walks by, including a buyer with a checkbook, as a designed, expensive, permanent feature of your home. That is the whole trade secret. That's what your landscaper charges hundreds to deliver, and you just did it in an afternoon with pocket change. Here's the feeling I want you to hold on to. You were about 8 weeks away from watching a whole weekend of work sag, snap, or fade into something you'd be embarrassed to have people see, and now you're not. You just kept your money in your pocket and your yard looking like you spent real money, which is exactly the opposite of what the garden center wants. And that's the kind of homeowner this channel is for. The kind who would rather hear the blunt truth from the guy in the truck than a polished pitch from somebody with a commission riding on your yes. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now I want to hear from you. Out of those 5, which one were you about to do, or which one did you already do and now you know why it went wrong? I'm betting a lot of you are guilty of number 1, the shiny finish, because I sure was for years. Tell me in the comments which mistake got you, and while you're down there, tell me where you're watching from, because I love seeing how far this stuff travels, and what folks are dealing with in different parts of the country. If this saved you even one wasted weekend, do one thing for me. Subscribe, and think of it less as following a channel and more as joining a bunch of homeowners who flat out refuse to get fleeced on their own property. Because next time, I'm breaking down the 3 cheap front yard upgrades that make buyers slow down and pull into your driveway, and one of them is a plant that costs under $15 that appraisers have quietly linked to higher offers. You do not want to guess wrong on that one. I'll see you there. So that's the overview. But the full 5-mistake fix panel by panel with my exact ties anchors, and spacing is waiting inside the curb appeal circle. In there, you can ask me your own question and a real person, me, answers you myself. And you won't be alone. Thousands of homeowners just like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen, and you can cancel anytime with one click. Now that your trellis is standing strong, let me save you some real money. In the next video, I'll show you 7 backyard privacy things you're overpaying for, when the dollar store does it for just $1.25. It's starting right here.